that the acting chief of police, at the same time that he withholds information on shootings, because the investigation is underway, makes public statements characterizing the people who get shot. I think the initial issue on this is public trust in whether oversight is going to work. And if trust works, then the current, I think even the current Police Oversight Commission, if there were trust between the police department and that segment of the community that is most frequently in contact with the police, could overcome whatever flaws there are. When the executive branch of the city is apparently, I don't know for a reality, I can't say, but apparently not interested in effectively correcting the problems. They're being investigated by the DOJ, yet the shootings continue, yet the mayor is conducting negotiations with the union that will undercut the work of this task force and any product that the council can put forward. And the police chief is withholding information and doing that. I don't know how we overcome that, but I do think that what really, it underlines how essential it is that whatever civilian oversight be conducted has to be absolutely independent of any connection with any chain of command involving the mayor's office. It might not be so elsewhere, but boy, it sure is in this city.
Okay. So here's what I like. I'm acutely aware that you're trying to get to a product by January 15th, and the first step I'm proposing is that we agree on the questions. We may have widely divergent answers to those questions, but can we agree on those questions? They will provide us reference points and a sense of essentialness that we're in. Several people use that term, essential, and I think that's what we want to go to. So I found that this low-tech and somewhat mechanical process actually works pretty well. So if you don't mind, take a couple minutes, sheet of paper, on your own, everybody. Individually, silently, so we don't get group think going. We actually get people's individual thoughts independently identified. What for you are the key questions, or if you want to frame it as a problem statement? This is very difficult. Framing well-crafted questions or problems is actually a fairly sophisticated process. So let's give it a shot. What are the key or the essential questions or problems that you believe must be answered in your report?
We want them in the form of a question.
You could question or problem statement. I'm going to be ecumenical on that, Mr. Chairman. I think rather than trying to get the grammar right, let's get the essence right. And take 3 or 4 minutes. Try to get 5 or 6.
5 or 6 questions?
Yeah, or issues with, problems. If you only get 2 or 3, that's great. But after all is said and done, what must be answered in this report? Okay, wherever you're at is great. And I found that staging this low, medium, whole group is probably a good idea, or individual medium. So what I'd like to suggest is that people in pairs just compare answers, maybe inspire or synthesize new ones, maybe find some overlaps, identify key agreements, maybe disagreements. So maybe Mr. Arianes and Ms. Koenigsberg, Mr. Erickson and Mr. Perea, Ms. Armijo, and Mr. Can you actually reach across the table, Mr. Simonson? Anyway, there's a symbol right there. No, I'm sorry. Mr. Wagman and Mr. Chairman and Mr. Lloyd, Mr. Waite. Here's the charge. Compare ideas. Come up with, I'm suggest a short list, 4 to 6 maybe, proposed nominations for essential questions or problems. I'll hand out a bunch of these big Post-its, and my suggestion is that rather than one word, if you say communication, it's like music. I don't know if it's jazz or blues or classical, so if there's a couple of descriptors might be helpful. And for visibility's sake, just please write big.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the thing about the 3 to 6 months.
Oh, I'm just saying, when you phrase it, what your question or problem is, a short phrase, sometimes people use, Simonson, a one-word answer, or one-word, they say, well, the essential question is, or essential problem is communication. I take your point, Mr. Perea, I just don't know if I understand it. So a couple of words attended to it, or appended to it might be useful. A headline, a short question, a short problem statement, something that fits on, I mean, not a whole thesis.
Okay, so each group of 2, you want to come up with 4
Okay.
to 6?
Yeah,
Okay.
topic, yeah.
Okay.
Okay? And then we'll exchange.
History on my task
Part of a larger, in fact, they all
So that was my question. The other one is
My questions are addressing Mrs. Rogers.
Well, actually, first,
So it's like these 2 words.
Hey, we'll put another one up here.
it's pretty specific.
Very wordy version of one of you, how do the residents of the city operate?
I guess, that ties to my hair, because this is me.
Policy practices and procedures that result in this.
And I have one of my
Well,
questions
just
ties
one.
to I think the major thing we have to do is
So I think you and I.
identify the consistent issues. Everything individual cases, they should be
Transparency, accountability, and also promote.
identify the big problems.
And I think, yeah,
How do we reduce they should be those kind of
So I think you got one.
Craig, did you shoot
The
John?
other one,
Why
this
didn't
is
Craig
so
and
much
John shoot?
broader, but that's what I'm.
I agree with those two persons.
It actually comes from.
So let's use
both
perspective.
our neighboring resolution and the,
I do block right. I do right cursive.
which is,
Okay, so 3 or
How
4.
does the civilian oversight process?
Mr. Wagner.
Are we, what are we
From
doing
the
with the
mayor.
4 to 6?
So if you could put a separate one, if you agree.
Match it up.
City council.
One of the things- Just put that on one of the boards. So what we're trying to do is see, actually, it's
I guess, can you use a different word for surprise?
surprise.
Address.
But we also want to make sure that the range of items. However, see, but some just individual aspects.
How can the police oversight
What we're asking about this
What about the
We want to make it zero. So how does the police oversight process?
The role of the IRL, how they
So, forgetting about the way the ordinance is written.
I mean, that's why you and I.
Mr. Loy, I'm write as big as you can. Don't rewrite it, just write it. I want to make sure Peter can see it, you know, and Francis doesn't get annoyed.
Instead of saying red.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You understand.
That was in NGT. So POC.
So do I have it stated in the way now that we're there? So how does the process?
Oh, okay.
I like that, because you're.
So, did you hear what Major? Barker said? He said if they fit the POC this well, we might get something done. I said, talk to Donna. Just talk to your fellow commissioner. Talk to your fellow commissioner.
See, I think that one, the one you just put at the bottom of the other two, goes more with how can oversight process impact police practice, that one.
Oh, because the patterns of abusive behavior is the focus here.
Right.
And unreasonable use of deadly force.
Right.
Okay, got it.
But I think the lack of trust about investigations being adequate and fair, let the group to ask it, but it could apply to lack of trust within a POC and the investigations, or it could mean the public's lack of trust. I don't know what that.
Got it. Well, let's add, who
I think it does go with.
who wrote this one?
We did, it was both, it was the public's lack of trust.
The public's lack of trust, so
So
let's,
shouldn't it be under G, even though that deals mostly with APD? They're both dealing with accountability and transparency to the public.
I don't know. I really, this posted glue is really good because I can move
Yeah.
things around, but so, I don't have, there's a certain visceral reaction you get when you look at the associations. Or, and so we
I think
can
it
talk about it. How about, of these other 5, is there a third pair that you would identify?
excuse me, I'm gonna get in your way occasionally.
Well, at POC to identify and address systemic issues. Systemic issues seems to be the theme of E,
Oh,
doesn't it?
well, it could be.
Yeah,
Okay.
could be.
And then we have one about what needs to change, the relationship between the different entities, the idea of effectiveness, some sort of evaluation or data may be implied there, and then something about
I
qualifications
think
and training.
effectiveness and qualification training and so forth.
What do you think? Does
I-
everybody else
I
think?
prefer to see the effectiveness of the POC with the systemic issues. Of course, it may not fit the two above that.
I agree with Craig. I think that's the purpose, is to be able to actually do something.
Yeah, I agree with that too. No, I think Craig
No,
is
no,
saying.
He's saying the other way.
Oh, move them
But that
both
was-
over.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
excuse me, I misunderstood.
Yeah, that way.
Got it. If we end up only with 2 or 3 essential questions, that'll be something.
The one on, we wrote that one, the one on account of qualifications, training, and attendance, that one. The accountability and transparency, trust issue, I think all relate to the qualifications, training, and attendance of the POC. I don't know if we want to move it, but the others are
I'll
more
put it over
narrowly
close.
defined. Okay.
Whatever, I don't know what everybody else thinks.
Yeah, because
What?
I think where the lack of trust, this third lack of trust on under G doesn't get to that. That's a reference to the IRO more than it is to the POC.
Right.
This one here.
True.
Or,
But, and I will just pose this as a question. Your reference point could be one of the structures within the oversight process, or you could relate it to the oversight process overall. And I don't know how you want to do
Well, we
it.
kind of did, but we did that in our second.
Got it, okay.
and I think
could
the
add-
qualifications, training, and attendance, that, we can leave it where it is, but I just want to comment, I think that does relate to lack of trust as well.
Uh-huh.
But that relates to lack of trust, from what we've heard from the police, lack of trust from the police for the commission.
Okay, so it's a trust from APD. Yeah, I get that.
Well, it's trust on the part of the public too. If we added POC and staff, couldn't we put that then under G?
You know, if, Tim, if we're gonna take the other cards. I
Let's
would
see
say
what
we
else
should-
we got. You're right. At some point, when it's sort of ambiguous, let's
Okay.
get some more information up
Okay.
here, and then we can make a better informed decision. Do you have anything that doesn't go with anything that's up here yet? We'll get the overlap, oh, well, no, bring
Yeah,
up
we
a
do.
second round. Here, let's just bring out a couple more. Couple more. That may be all we have. Oh, okay, great. Seriously, if there's already kind of a coalescing around very few questions, that may be something to actually celebrate.
Woohoo!
No, I mean, seriously, sometimes you work with some groups that are working
No,
on very
we
complex
understand.
problems, and it's all over.
Okay, let's keep going.
So, how to improve civilian APD relations?
Wait, that should go under C, shouldn't it?
Let me just put them up for a
Oh,
second.
okay.
How to create greater independence? How does the task force have real power and influence? I'm guessing this relates back to the earlier agenda discussion. Lack of trust between officers and the POC, I think that was
Especially under H, I think.
Yeah.
funding to be independent and sufficient funding to be independent. If I get that right?
Funding should be independent and.
Oh, should be independent, okay. So the question is, how's it? Okay. Discipline, authority, recommendation. There need to be, could somebody explain this
Who
one?
has the authority to discipline? And speaking of which, Craig asked earlier for specifics on conflicts, potential conflicts between contract and ordinance. That's a potential area of conflict, because the contract currently and probably in the future will specify that only the chief can.
Right.
So, but I think that goes, relationship between IRO, POC chief, and mayor.
This one here. I'm not inferring or I'm not intending to imply any relationship horizontally. These are just vertical themes. Is there another new one?
The funding.
The funding, even if it's by itself, that's a sufficiently important category.
Lack of trust goes under G also.
This one goes under G.
No, I think it goes under H.
Okay, it's more H than G.
Well, according to what I heard before about, yeah, that aligns with what I heard
Yeah, yeah.
before. Okay.
But isn't the how to create greater independence under funding independence sufficient?
Oh,
Independence really-
Yeah. That would be good.
all right. I see your point.
But I'm wondering if how to create greater independence. I'm wondering if keep funding separate completely, because I'm wondering how to complete greater independence might go under F, because,
I think that's right.
Yeah. Good.
and maybe you put funding there too, but I think the how to create greater independence.
No, keep funding separate.
I think that's a useful separate question.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, if you want to, if everybody gets it intuitively, fine. If you want to explain it, that's great. What needs to change? This is, I was half joking and saying it's sort of overarching, but is there a connection with anything up here so far?
Everything.
So we'll put it over here. How to improve civilian APD relations.
Yeah, it goes under H.
That's F maybe?
Oh, wait, no,
Trust,
I'm sorry.
G.
Forget I said that.
Oh, if this is
Okay.
related to the public, well, that's
Yeah,
really
that's good.
part of that deal. Although civilian, does that also include civilian staff within APD? What are you talking about, the public? Public, got it, okay. And does the task force have real power and influence?
The best case scenario would probably be under funding independence sufficient.
Yeah.
That'd be the best case.
I think so too.
Okay.
I mean, that,
Can we ask
Better than
the
anywhere
people who wrote
else.
that question, can we ask them what they intended by it?
Yes, good question.
That,
Oh, I think
that's,
that's,
we were just
Excuse me.
thinking back at the very beginning of this evening, where we were talking about what are we doing here? Is it gonna have any meaning to anybody that matters? I think that's where we can, that maybe don't belong up there now as things progress, but that's where we were coming from.
let me just give these tag names in English words rather than just the letters, so that we have a reference point to talk from.
Mr. Chair.
okay, we're on now to number 7, other business.
This, I have a
Mr.
question
Wayne.
about upcoming meetings.
Oh, okay.
My understanding is after our meeting on the 15th, that the ordinance will be drafted by a paid consultant. We don't have any meeting scheduled to review the product.
Right. We have to review the product, and you threw me with the word ordinance.
Proposed ordinance.
Yeah.
It's actually
I-
going to be a report,
yeah.
changes, not a full
Okay.
But he's right about the scheduling. We need to schedule 2 meetings towards the end of January. 2 more meetings to have the task force review the report.
Can we meet on the 22nd?
Well, I don't know if we need 1 or 2, but I want to get them scheduled.
2-hour meeting on the 22nd.
Well, is the report going to be written by the 22nd? Will there be something?
1:22. Let's just schedule the meetings and we'll see how it goes. We don't know.
We can
So-
cancel any meetings, sure.
Right, 1:22 and 1:28, I guess.
22.
29. 1:22 and 1:29.
29?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll need to find rooms, need to check.
Okay.
122. 122 is not a good date.
There's a holiday that week,
Martin Luther King.
that Wednesday is our council meeting.
Right.
So, that's just hard.
Wednesday.
Because of, is it Martin Luther King?
Martin Luther King is
It's on a
Monday.
Monday, yeah.
So the council has to meet on Wednesday that week,
Which week?
on the 22nd.
So is it a problem that we in the council are meeting at the same time?
Kind of, because the staff has to be at the council meeting, including Donna and myself.
Okay, can we make it Tuesday or Thursday, I guess, that week?
Can't be
Is that-
Tuesday.
is that the first
Can't be
Thursday?
Tuesday.
Thursday.
How about
Thursday?
Thursday?
Is that the first Thursday?
You can't make it Thursday. Well, there's gonna be some, you know, no matter what we do.
Fourth, Thursday.
Okay, how many people want Tuesday? Raise your hand.
What is that date?
21st, wasn't that Martin Luther King?
21st? Oh, okay.
Monday is.
Monday
20th.
is, Monday is.
Mhm.
I'm gonna ask for how many people want Tuesday and how many people want Thursday, just so I get a read on this. How many people want Tuesday? Raise your hand.
Over
That's-
Thursday, yes.
Yeah, that carries it.
Tuesday or Thursday, I don't care.
Oh, you don't care?
So that's Thursday.
She gets.
Okay, how many people want Thursday? Well, that didn't help a whole lot.
23rd, yeah, either one, Tuesday or Thursday, just not Wednesday.
Maybe we should figure out.
Right, so ask,
that's
ask who
right.
can't, how many people can't make it Tuesday and how many can't make it Thursday?
Okay, how many people can't make it Tuesday? One. How many people can't make two? How many people can't make it Thursday? One. Two. It was 2 and 2.
Well, I have a strong preference against Tuesdays, so you can count me in on Tuesdays. I don't know if that helps.
See, and I'd rather it not be Thursday, so,
Me too.
why don't I leave it to staff?
But you can't be here either day,
Whatever.
right?
Tuesday's open.
Well, I have teaching class on both nights.
Okay, so he don't count, because he can't be here either night.
Right. Okay.
Let me see what the room availability is.
I was just gonna say, why don't we leave it to
Both of those
staff,
days, okay?
and she can see what room is available, and we'll either be a Tuesday or a Thursday, and we'll send out a notice.
We can go ahead.
On the 29th, so.
Right.
We can go ahead and
Okay, any more questions on the upcoming meetings stuff? All right, let me move to other business. We all received an email from Linda Donahue asking me to respond to a series of questions in writing. I'm putting it to the task force as to whether or not you want me to respond or not respond. I'm not compelled to respond, so we can either do it or not do it.
Mr. Chair, I didn't see the email. Linda Donahue?
Yeah. Linda Donahue is a community activist who's been to most of our meetings, and the public meetings, et cetera, and has been involved in this process. So she's been
Several of her questions, at least one in particular being, why no public comment? I mean,
Right.
that was addressed very clearly. I don't see why we rehash that with her.
Okay, I'm just raising the question whether or not to respond.
My
I know how I would respond.
My
but-
recommendation that we don't respond is my
Okay.
personal opinion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
before I respond to you, how did she get my email address anyway? And the
I
reason
don't know.
ask is that,
I
on
don't know
my
how she
job-
got it.
Okay, on my particular job, I can't receive those type of outside emails, and so,
I don't know how they get
How we can
distributed.
control that.
I don't know. Somebody probably forwarded one of our emails to one of the community activists, be it Ms. Donahue or Mr. Delangela or somebody who got the emails. So.
What did she
I-
ask?
there's nothing-
Did
So-
she ask, oh, I'm sorry.
She asked about 8 questions. Why no public comment, and I think she raised a question about you,
Sure.
and
I don't have a problem with
she,
that, Mr.
a
Chair,
bunch of
but-
questions.
But my,
You can read the email.
to answer your question, whether you should respond, I said I would say no.
And anybody else?
I think since she asked you personally, it's your personal decision whether you respond or not, and your personal response. Since I don't see it happening that you cannot write a response and then send it out to us to vote on, because that's a violation of the Open Meetings Act. So as a practical matter, the decision of whether or not to respond, I think, is yours, and a response is yours, not ours.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, no matter what you say, she's not gonna like it.
I'm sure of that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Alan is saying. At the same point, I think we can certainly give you recommendations and give our sense of it. And I guess my concern is that sort of creates the question of, can anybody send any question to you that has anything to do with this process? And once you start a tradition of answering those questions, you sort of create an obligation to answer future questions as well. And I got the sense that maybe she was trying to create a public records request of some sort, or the request was sort of.
Hard to
It's not a
say.
public records request,
No,
obviously.
it didn't come in the form of a public record request. She may be baiting me. I mean, we could
That's right.
speculate all we want on what her intents are. I have my own thoughts about that. The question is whether or not I respond as chair of the task force. So I wanted to ask the task force how they felt about it.
So my recommendation is that you don't respond, but I
Okay.
think an alternative would be to have a public comment section at the next meeting in which she could come and ask her questions and we could briefly respond.
Okay, others?
Yeah, and I agree with Peter. I don't know that this really goes into specific business of the task force itself. It may become distracting from our mission. We have to be very careful. If you feel the response is necessary, we can refer it to city council services. Maybe they could provide.
Well, it was addressed to me, but I
But I want to be real careful that we're not responding as a task force, because the
Right.
credibility of the task force is incredibly important. So we want to
Absolutely.
stay focused on the mission. So we'll just
So-
be careful.
Mr. Chair, I also just want to comment, some of the questions she asked today, a legal answer that I don't think most of us at this table can answer.
Okay.
And I would have
I've-
to refer those to Chris Melendez.
I've heard enough. Yeah, I've heard enough. I'm not inclined to respond anyway, but I just wanted to make sure I put it out publicly because it was sent to everybody that you all had some input on it. I do not think we should respond. I think she's trying to bait me or get something that she can relay to God knows who. So my inclination is to not do that. However, with the comments that you made, Peter, I want to just kind of put this on the table. I had kind of a somewhat similar reaction to two emails that went out in the last week. One was from you, Hans, and one was from Fabrizio, where he requested that you pull all the editorials and distribute those. In the same way that any member of the public could ask a question if I open that door, I think it might be problematic to have individual task force members send out whatever they want to the full task force. I think that's a problematic practice, and I want y'all to think about it, and think about that before you do it. The reason being, although you didn't express an opinion, thank goodness, you just raised this was in the paper and we don't have a say about it. Had you raised an opinion, it might have triggered discussion on email, which is inappropriate.
I mean, that's up to everybody else, if they're gonna have a discussion about it.
I'm just saying, I don't think it's helpful to have email discussions about the deliberations of this task force or policy implications and those kinds of things. With Fabrizio's, it was kind of the same sort of thing. What was distributed, I think there were a couple of articles in there, but it was mostly editorials. So editorials are the opinion of the editorial board of the newspaper. We can all read them, you can ask for them independently, but for a single member to pull those particular opinions and ask that they be distributed to the full task force, again, I think is somewhat problematic. I'm just putting that on the table. I'm not asking for a motion. I don't want to get into an argument with everybody about your right to express your opinion and all that. I just think, and that's fine, everybody has a right to express their opinion. I'm just pointing out a potential difficulty in putting out messages on the email where people might respond.
Well, I guess I'm sensitive to, I think, what your concerns are about trying to have some boundaries around how information gets shared and such, I wonder if maybe an alternative is for that, anything that's gonna be shared to go through you, the chair, before it goes out to the rest of the committee, because I will say, I think it's important for all of us to be operating with the same information, and I have had some concern, I appreciated the fact that I was able to get that information today. I also received from someone today, a letter that the police association's attorneys have served on the city regarding concerns about the IRO and the information that's included in there that evidently is a violation of the contract. I didn't receive that directly, and, you know, I think we should all be operating with the same information, and I think that stuff should get circulated. So one way or another, whether it happens from a task force member to the task force, or it all goes through you, I think we should all be operating with the same information.
Yeah, 'cause I didn't see that one.
I didn't see it either. He didn't distribute it. So none of us saw it except Peter, I guess.
As a matter of protocol, maybe to the chair, to council services, so we keep council services in the group, and maybe if appropriate, maybe we get that from council services.
In thinking about it, I think that those distributions, I don't think there's a problem if it comes from council staff. I don't think that having it come from the chair is different from having it come from another member of the commission.
Well, it's just
I don't see
considered
it
a
that way.
transitory message, so, I don't, it doesn't fall within the arena of you guys deliberating or anything.
Yeah, no, I wasn't as much concerned about it being sent out as I am about people responding to it in like form via email. That's my concern.
That's
But-
all.
But nobody is, I certainly didn't receive any emails from anybody in response to the compilation of editorials, which I found useful, and I didn't see any emails going around in response to, the article Hans sent out. So I think probably, if we didn't all understand, we can't talk about that stuff. We certainly do now after you just raised the point.
Okay. But I would feel more comfortable if they went through me. As a further concern, I don't want, and I don't think it's fair to staff to have everybody on the task force for the staff to be at their beck and call and asking them to do things. I don't think that's appropriate either. And there are task force members who have done that, approach staff directly. Could you please do this for me, being a particular member of the task force? So I want to prevent that as well. Like I said, I don't want to belabor this. I'm just trying to keep some control over our deliberations and what information gets distributed and so forth.
Okay, and then you were asking a question about the voting process and how that was gonna work. Are we gonna continue with that discussion?
How do you guys feel? Do you have enough energy to devote to that now?
I want 8.
You want 8?
Supermajority.
Oh,
Well,
so you're saying you have enough energy to discuss it?
Mr. Chair,
I already ate, but yeah, I want
If,
8.
Mr. Chair, with all due respect, I really feel that requires it to be announced as an agenda item before we can take a vote. And if you're gonna vote on it, please
We aren't
warn me,
voting.
because I'm gonna leave, so I'm not present when you do it.
I think we already discussed that we're not gonna vote on it.
Well, that's not what, I don't believe that's where Mr. Litton was going.
Right, I wasn't. I feel like we're not violating the Open Meetings Act because we had discussed it at a previous meeting. Can I get a legal opinion from somebody?
I'm not a lawyer, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but, I think, in my opinion, my humble opinion, because you've already opened up the process of facilitation at yet last week's meeting and this week's meeting, because it relates to the facilitation, I don't see any problem on discussing or voting on that. I think if you put it off till next week, you're gonna just be wasting more of your
Of next
3
week's
hours.
time, yeah.
Yes, and we're all here now, so.
Okay.
If you, Mr. Chair, need a legal opinion, I can certainly ask Mr. Melendez for.
I'm comfortable with it. I feel as you do. I think it was discussed last time. It's, I don't know if it's in the minutes, it should be. And we can discuss it. My concern is more if everybody has enough energy to deal with this, because it could take a little while. And I'm kind of looking around the room, it seems as though people want to discuss it, so let me open it for discussion. You've already made a comment, you think it should be a supermajority, is that what you're saying? Okay, so do you want to make that in the form of a motion, and we can discuss it?
I'd make a motion that a supermajority consists of 8-4.
Okay, is there
Could
a
somebody
second?
call me when you're done, please?
Is there a second to that? There not being a second, that,
I'll second.
Oh.
Here's a second.
okay.
We'll discuss it.
It's been moved and seconded, so let's discuss that now.
No, is that to pass, what would we be, on anything we vote on? A supermajority or on something we wanna pass as a commission?
If I can, I don't want to add words to your motion, but I think it's voting on the recommendations, the final recommendations.
That's what it is.
So it's
Yeah.
a majority plus one, basically, is that right?
It's a majority plus one.
We have 11 members, so. it'd be
We
a
have
majority
11,
plus 2.
yeah.
We've got 11.
We've got 11.
I think as long as we have a majority,
So you're for a
the
simple
vote in
majority.
the affirmative, that passes, majority passes.
Okay.
I just
Fine.
appreciate hearing some discussion about what are the advantages of us having a supermajority.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Since you proposed it, you want to address that?
I think that if you have just a simple majority of 11 people, you have 6 people for to pass something, you're leaving out 5. I mean, you're just about half of the task force. We talked about trying to have a consensus. Earlier when we discussed this at the last meeting, we talked about trying to have some kind of consensus that is more than 50%. And at 6-5, you're talking about 50%. Yeah, I'm good at math, I understand 6 is one more than 5. But you're real close to being 50%. 8, if you get 8 out of 11, if you get a consensus of 8 people, there can be no argument that the task force pretty much supports it. There's no one here not gonna be against something, I would imagine. They're all gonna have an idea that I don't like that, I don't like this. But if there's a vote of 6-5, or maybe even 7-5, 7-4, I'm gonna feel like my word didn't count a whole lot. But if there's 8-3, I'm gonna think, well, this is my thoughts on this, but there's 8 people saying that maybe I'm wrong or I'm misguided or something. I just feel that if you get 8, there can be no doubt that the task force's will was to go with it.
I appreciate the purpose of it. My only question would be what we would do in the event that we don't have a full task force present. If we only have 10 or 9 folks present, how we would deal with it. I think the principle's a good one, and I agree with the principle.
Would you be willing to change your motion to say a supermajority of those present? That would cover your concern.
Of a quorum, yeah, whatever the quorum.
Quorum,
And
yeah.
what numbers is?
What is it?
A
What is the number for a
supermajority
quorum?
in a meeting where a quorum is
Mr. Chair,
present.
Mr. Chair.
A quorum is 6.
Right.
So anything over 6, and a supermajority would be at least one more than half, right?
No more than half.
Oh, no, I guess it would be 2 more than half.
Proposal, well, super just means more than half, so we'd have to identify how many more than.
Right, so it'd be, that's why I say 2. It would have to be 2 more than half.
Well, I think we all agreed to operate under Robert's Rules of Order since the onset. So I think we've been operating that way since the beginning, and that's the majority.
The council has a supermajority for some things, do they not? What number is that?
Yeah, I don't think a supermajority conflicts with Robert's rules.
It's 2/3, right?
Yeah,
It's 2/3.
It's 2/3.
It's 2/3.
Yeah. I'm not gonna
So-
never figure out 2/3 of 11.
No, but we could say, we could use yeah, we could use that 2/3, 2/3 of those present. Is that acceptable to you?
Sure.
Okay. So now it's 2/3 to address your,
2/3 of the quorum.
are there
2/3 of the
other
quorum.
comments on the motion?
And that
So
would
the
be
motion
just for our
2/3.
recommendation.
Is the motion
Motion's 2/3.
The motion, I'll amend my motion to make it 2/3 of the quorum
Of those present?
of those present for voting on the recommendations.
Final.
So what, Go ahead. So what happens if we don't get a 2/3 on it? It doesn't pass as a recommendation?
Right, we gotta keep arguing.
Well, I
If
disagree
this
with that.
passes.
It may not be that
Disagree with
important.
that,
Okay, well, you can disagree. You wanna say more about it, or?
Well, I just think, I mean, if we as a body have evaluated something and the majority feels one way, then that's a majority. I mean, we
Okay.
can always try to move the marker or the chains about what's a super majority. Well, you know,
Well, no, we're specifying 2/3, so that's what the supermajority is going to be.
But we also gotta establish what the quorum is. What's the
Right.
number of people?
We have to have
Well,
or
six.
more.
Six
It's at
is the
least
quorum.
six,
Six or
yeah.
more.
Okay.
That's
before you
already
can even have a vote.
established.
No.
Right.
So you'd have to have 4 of those folks to vote.
Okay.
Well,
if
In
there's
that
6.
event.
I'm
or,
sorry,
yeah,
I-
right,
I
it could
didn't
be
hear
more
that.
than 6,
I didn't
but
hear
6
that.
is a quorum.
A supermajority would go to the strength of the recommendation, and I think our recommendations have to be strong. One of the things that we asked for up here is that we want to improve the chances of these recommendations being adopted. Well, I think we stand a greater chance of these recommendations being adopted if those recommendations come by strength of the task force. If it barely passes by the majority, that means that has the minority almost equal voting against the recommendation, and maybe the council will look at that and say, well, this is okay, but if they couldn't get a supermajority, or if they barely got a minority or majority on this, maybe it's not that strong. So if we want to send a message to the council that we believe in these recommendations, maybe we tighten the bar just a little bit and say, you know, we believe in these recommendations, and we'll go with the supermajority.
Okay. Peter, then Hans.
I agree, and like I say, I agree with the principle of this. I'm concerned about 2/3. I wouldn't want us to get ourselves in a situation where it's such a rigorous process that we find ourselves eliminating literally 2/3 of our recommendations, and we water down, we wind up weeding out too many of our recommendations. If we say, for example, majority plus 1, it gives us more opportunity, I think, to pass more recommendations, and in fact, we can still say it's a supermajority. So, at least for posterity's sake, we'd still be saying it's a supermajority, and that, I think, it carries some weight on its own. So I'd be in favor of, I think 2/3 is too rigorous. I'd prefer something less rigorous, but that still addresses the principle of supermajority, if we can have those 2 principles together.
Other folk, oh, Hans, you raised your hand.
Well, the risk, obviously, is that even though we might have very confident recommendations, you just said this, but that we might not have very much to recommend. So what if we only have 3 things to recommend, and they're basically tangential to the central issues that we're discussing? I think that I would be really uncomfortable having a requirement that was, I would prefer really just to be a majority, but certainly a majority plus 2 is gonna, I don't know yet, but I'm just concerned it's gonna eliminate almost everything. Which I think would be worse than having recommendations that are, don't bring whole confidence in task force. I mean, the council obviously is going to recognize that you're going to need a significant amount of dissent on some or all the recommendations, so that's just kind of game.
Mr. Lloyd.
For
give me a
example,
raise.
we have 11
Call you
people
next.
here, and 6 vote for it, 5 say no. A lot of people are gonna say, that's not so important, because almost half, 5 of the people on that task force said, we don't think it was that important enough to support it. If you have 2/3, you gotta fight for that. It's important if it's 2/3. That's why council uses it for select votes, for that reason. You fight for it, you argue for it. It's important it gets on there. If it's not important enough to generate 2/3, then maybe it don't belong here. Well, maybe it's just something that 4 or 5 people got together. If there's 6 people that's in a meeting, you got 4 people that were sit on one committee, they say, well, we like it, and all you other people that weren't on our committee, too bad. That's why I think the supermajority is so important.
Do you have a direct response? Because otherwise I'm going to call them around.
Actually, my question was, what kind of issues does the council require majority on?
To override the mayor's veto on bills, other certain.
It's a pretty big deal.
Oh. Okay. Our facilitator is pointing out that 2/3 is the same as a majority plus 1. He did the math. Here, look at it.
Maybe we should discuss that.
Other comments on this question?
I just think that we don't need to polarize the process any further. I think we discussed at the beginning of this meeting that there's already a bunch of different factors coming into play, the contract negotiation, the papers, all these different things. We don't need to add more to make it more difficult to move forward with.
Do we really
I'll take
see
two more
ourselves-
comments.
Do we really see ourselves as being so disproportionate in our recommendations? I mean, I don't see that we're gonna disagree that much, that we need this. I really don't. I think
Okay.
we're all headed the same direction with these recommendations.
Anybody else?
I guess you did the math.
Okay, I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor, the question on the floor is this 2/3 majority. So all those in favor of having a supermajority, 2/3, for final recommendations, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. I have to break the deadlock. Wow.
Can I see the yes, no's again, the yes? What do you wanna vote?
No, can I see the yes again? Can you
What?
raise your hand?
Oh, yeah, you
Yes.
wanna know who's who, okay.
Got
The
it.
yeses, are those in favor of the supermajority is,
Got him.
you got them?
Mhm.
Okay, those opposed? Raise your hands again, please.
Oh, sorry, those.
Opposed? You got it?
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Gonna break the tie.
Yeah. I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I think it would be useful to have to get as close to consensus as possible. So I'm gonna go for the 2/3 on the final recommendations, and I think we should try and achieve that. There, I broke the tie. So there you go. If there's any other business? There being no other business, I'm calling this meeting adjourned. Thank you. Oh,
Did you have
there's
something
one
more than this
abstention, I
individual?
guess.
I got it. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Well, I wasn't even present to abstain.
It's okay. He wasn't, there
Oh,
was
no,
one
no,
person
no.
absent. Absent for the vote. I guess that's how he wants it. He doesn't want to abstain, he wants to be absent. Thank you all. I know this was a long meeting. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Huh?
I hope that was helpful.
Well,
Thanks, Tim.
Your math didn't break the, didn't create a majority here.
Yeah.
I know. I'm just proved it on the first vote.
Oh, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
I'm not gonna be able, I'll be able to read it. I have all the questions.
Thank you.
Wait a second.
I'll be right back.
We need to get this.
Yeah,
right, there you
I did
go.
write all the questions down. I wrote all the major
Oh,
questions
good,
down.
thank you so much.
I'm gonna do it as well.
You need all your cookies.
Need the energy to, that's right.
Sorry. Thank you.
Ralph and I did. I know. There's about 4 things we're.
Bye, Bruce.
Wait, some of the other ones, I was.
Oh, that's all right.
Can I give this to you, that G thing that's